Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Usman Khan. Sheikh Nya was supposed to chair the session, but it seems that he's not yet here. So I will introduce the first speaker, Arman Siddiqui, and when Sheikh comes, he will take over.
I'm pleased to take over the chairmanship of this panel. I would like to congratulate Sheikh Ahmed Bukhari Nyang for his magnificent communication on Tijaniya festivals. I take this opportunity to congratulate the previous speaker, Arman Siddiqui, who will speak on the following topic. Mohammed Milanzi was born in Timbiza, in South Africa. He is a Hafiz of Quran, one who has memorized the entire scripture. He holds a BSc degree in computer science for the University of Cape Town. He also holds a number of ijaza in the science of Sharia and Tasawwuf from a variety of illustrious mashayikh, including Sheikh Ibrahim Haber from Mauritania, Sheikh Mohammed Mahi from Senegal, Muhammad Shoaib Ahmad from South Africa, and Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Shakur Al-Mayadini from Jordan. He has also attended several illustrious madaris, traditional schools, and has given lectures on variety of Islamic topics to various conferences and gatherings. Islamic community development is Muhammad's driving passion, and the current serves as Imam of the Falak Islamic community in Dark Park in South Africa, where he runs a variety of spiritual, educational, and outreach activities. He is a Muqaddam, authorized representative of the Tariqa Tijaniya, and served as the president of the Gautam FAYDAH Tijaniya, in which capacity he leads dhikr invocation cycle on behalf of Sheikh Haber. Muhammad served as deputy president of the Muhammad VI Foundation of African Ulemas in South Africa, which strive to revive traditional Islamic interpretation and promote peace through the collaboration of Islamic scholars through Africa. His life's work is the development of health, sustainable, and model Islamic community life. Thank you. Mohammed Milanzi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما غلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. ورضي الله تعالى عن أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. To the honorable convener of this illustrious conference, Professor Usman Khan, to the respected chair of this panel, Mubarak Shuyukh, my esteemed fellow panelists, scholars of the Tariqa, my brothers and sisters on the path and conference, guests at large. We greet all of you with the greetings of Salam, and thank you for the introduction and for the great honor of being part of this conference. Today, we'll be presenting on the flood in the south, the FAYDAH of the Tariqa Tijaniya in South Africa. As a Murid and Muqaddam of the Tariqa, I cannot and do not claim to be without bias, but I have sought to capture this history as objectively as possible. As far as the methodology I used for the study, there's limited scholarly documentation on this topic, but I relied on a lot of the work of Susanna Mollins Litteras, who has done excellent work on the ground on Tijaniya in Cape Town. I also reviewed writings of on Islam in general in South Africa. On my side, I conducted 24 formal interviews with the role players in the Tariqa and also relied on countless informal conversations, personal recordings, notes, and recollections from my 16 years as a Tijani. Identity is very complex in South Africa, so I want to highlight 3 terms that I used in my study, which I think are important to understand. First, Cape Malays are the descendants of enslaved people from the Dutch East Indies, current-day Indonesia, brought to South Africa by Dutch colonists who mixed over time in the country with other groups and have developed a distinct culture. I note that this definition may be contested. Secondly, this is another contested category, but for our purposes, indigenous South Africans are South Africans from black tribes that are considered native to South Africa. That is the Khoisan, Ndebele, Zulu, Pedi, Sotho, Tswana, Swazi, Venda, Tsonga, and Xhosa. Third, in the paper, I use the term Indian Malay, which in this study includes individuals whose heritage is primarily Indian, primarily Malay, and those whose heritage includes different mixtures of these. Next, in the paper, I provide some context on the state of Islam in South Africa. Excuse me. Next in the paper, I provide some context in the state of Islam in South Africa and why the ground was so fertile for the FAYDAH to take hold here. Important to note is that 3 waves of Muslims entered South Africa consisting of enslaved people and political exiles from Dutch East Indies, present-day Indonesia, beginning in the 1600s. Secondly, indentured laborers and merchants from the Indian subcontinent beginning in the 1800s. Thirdly, beginning in 1994, after the fall of apartheid, were immigrants entering from around Africa and other parts of Muslim world. Currently, Islam remains a minority religion at approximately 1.9% Muslim, and Black Africans are the fastest growing group of Muslims in the country. I also speak briefly about the xenophobic violence the country has experienced in recent years, which has affected Muslim immigrants. Also, in many parts of the world, South Africa is experiencing a rise in Salafi Wahhabi ideology. But at the same time, there has been a Sufi renaissance as sheikhs from around the world have been able to enter the country as it opened up after apartheid. Mollins Litteras writes about some Indian, Malay, South African Muslims whose families have lived in South Africa for several generations, who have come to identify more with South Africa than their ancestral homelands and have been looking to connect more with African Islam. At the same time, my research has confirmed that many indigenous Muslims have been looking to other parts of Islamic Africa for inspiration as they seek to Africanize, quote unquote, Islam for their own communities. I do note in the study that I don't want to overstate the importance of these trends, as the vast majority of people come to the Tijaniya do so for spiritual benefit that they see in it. But these dynamics did prepare the ground for the coming of the FAYDAH Tijaniya to South Africa, to South African shores 30 years ago. So how did the FAYDAH of Tijaniya arrive in South Africa? So the story begins in 1990 in our neighboring country of Namibia. There, an Indian Malay Sheikh Anwar Bayat of South Africa met Rwandans Muqaddam Umar and Sidi Ali Ntahoheka, who had recently converted to Islam and taken the tariqah at the hand of Sheikh Abubakar Mvumvaneza, also from Rwanda, who was a Muqaddam of Sheikh Hassan Sisi radiallahu anhu. Sheikh Anwar also took the tariqah and was given taqdeem from Sheikh Abubakar. They moved to Senegal to increase their knowledge and to do khidmah to Sheikh Hassan radiallahu anhu. Sheikh Anwar returned to South Africa in 1994, and the tariqah began spreading to his family and friends in the Indian Malay community in Cape Town. A few indigenous South Africans also took the tariqah in Cape Town at this time. In Senegal, Muqaddam Umar was also given taqdeem, and in 1996 was sent to South Africa by Sheikh Hassan radiallahu anhu. In South Africa, he was advised that he could work for Islam more effectively in the Gauteng province, home of the economic hub of Johannesburg and the administrative capital of Pretoria, where indigenous Muslims were more numerous and organized. He began doing da'wah work there. Muslims were more calling people to Islam and only telling about the tariqah if asked. And the tariqah also began to spread in Gauteng, particularly among indigenous Muslims. Sheikh Abu Bakr would later also come to South Africa to help guide the community in Cape Town. After the fall of apartheid in 1994, Senegalese and Nigerian Tijanis also began immigrating to the country, but they were not formally organized and had little intimate interaction with South Africans outside of those who married South African women. These would change as the various communities shared Shaykh Hassan radiallahu ta'ala, who would bring them together. When the early Murids arrived, when the early Murids invited Shaykh Hassan radiallahu anhu to South Africa, he told them they must first build him a house. At first, they thought he meant a house to live in, but Sheikh Abu Bakr advised them that he meant they should establish a zawiya. The community wanted to establish the zawiya in the nicest areas of Cape Town in order to honor the Sheikh. But Sheikh Abu Bakr stressed the importance of gathering in areas accessible to the impoverished masses of indigenous South Africans. So they settled on the township of Guguletu for various reasons, were forced to buy in section 4, which those I interviewed described as the most dangerous section of the township at the time. Rape and murder were common, and the Murids would often hear and sometimes even witness shootings. Indigenous South African Sheikh Ashraf Zanzi, the current Imam of the Zawiya, says the impact of the Tariqah was physical and spiritual in Guguletu. Sheikh Hassan's spiritual assistance has now transformed the section 4 in the best, into the best section of Guguletu. Sheikh radiallahu anhu eventually came to South Africa to attend the UN World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg. He was only in the country for a week, but he managed to visit different places in Gauteng, Durban, and Cape Town. Highlights from the Sheikh's visit include meeting privately with the then President Thabo Mbeki. He was gifted Atteridgeville Masjid for the Tijani community in Pretoria to use, and he also was welcomed by hundreds of celebrating non-Muslim South Africans when opening the Guguletu Zawiya, which he later called the best welcome he had ever received, according to one Muqaddam I interviewed. The following year, in 2003, Sheikh Hassan came back for a second longer visit. There were several highlights from this second trip that I discussed in the paper, including that he was pledged the building of a masjid for the people of Garankuwa in Gauteng. In the paper, I described the impact that the Tariqah has had on improving the lives of the people of Garankuwa, even those who aren't Tijani, a pattern that is also seen in other townships where the Tijaniya has penetrated around the province, such as Atteridgeville, Tembisa, and Soweto. In this trip, Sheikh Hassan radiallahu anhu also introduced Sheikh Ibrahim Heiba, affectionately known as Sheikh Bai, to the country. In 2003, the Tijani community in South Africa needed a scholar who could lead them in prayers in Ramadan and instruct them in Islam and the Tijaniya. And Sheikh Hassan told them that Sheikh Bai would be the most suitable person for that. Sheikh Bai is the great-grandson of Sheikh Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala anhu and the grandson of Sayyid Ali Sisi radiallahu ta'ala anhu through his mother Sayyidah Kulthum radiallahu anha. The sister of Sheikh Hassan radiallahu anhu, he received Ijaza al-Aliya in Sharia at Al-Ma'had al-Ali lid-Dirasat wal-Buhuth al-Islamiyya in 1992. And he was also trained in and received Ijaza in several traditional Islamic sciences, including the Tariqa Tijaniya and the Ijaza in Quran by Sheikh Hassan radiallahu anhu. He serves as Imam of Masjid Tilawa in Nouakchott in Mauritania and has produced many hufaz from several countries, including South Africa. Sheikh Bai has spent the month of Ramadan in South Africa nearly every year since 2003 and has visited every province in the country except Limpopo. Some of the highlights of Sheikh Bai's trip include that he's given the Shahada to countless people. He helped organize and unite the Murids in the country and has met with several kings and chiefs of South African tribes. Sheikh Bai is known for imparting lessons with a keen sense of humor. He often renders the poems of Sheikh Ibrahim radiallahu anhu in song form. followed by a passionate commentary focused on instilling love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The formal introduction, instruction component of his lessons include teachings of the books such as Jawahir al-Rasail, Shaykh Ibrahim's Ruhul Adab, and the book of fasting from Sahih al-Bukhari during Ramadan, as was done by Shaykh al-Islam Shaykh Ibrahim radiallahu anhum, among others. Shaykh Bai's main methodology is teaching by example, and I give several examples of that in the paper. Other major visits by Shuyukh to South Africa include Fadila to Sheikh Tijan Sise in 2012, Fadila to Sheikh Muhammad Mahi Sise in 2015, and Fadila to Sheikh Muhammad Al-Hassan Ali Sisi in 2018. They visited multiple places around the country and continued the work begun by Fadila to Sheikh Hassan radiallahu anhu. It should be noted that many other prominent and respected FAYDAH shuyukh, including shuyukh from the family of Shaykh Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala anhu, have also visited the country over the years. The above trips are highlighted due to the official and coordinated nature of the visits. In the words of Sheikh Abu Bakr, the coming of the shuyukh to South Africa always marked growth of the Tijaniya Brotherhood. After talking about the shuyukh's visit, I move in the paper to the practical ways that the tariqah is experienced and expressed in South Africa. I detail various dynamics that are unique to South Africa, including racial and immigrant local dynamics, which can be bumpy at times, but it's pretty much universally agreed by the MURIDs that the tariqah practically exemplifies the non-racial, non-nationalistic basis of Islam, as Mollins Literas puts it. I also cover the sectarian dynamics, such as the booklets that have been written sharply criticizing the tariqah by the members of the Tabligh Jamaat, and as well in the inter-tariqah dynamics, such as the joint mawluds, which serve to unify the tariqahs and educate the Muslim community about tasawwuf. Next in the paper, I give a few selected bay'ah stories as examples of the different ways Murids in South Africa have come into the tariqah. One such interesting story that I can highlight briefly now is one young now muqaddama who left her previous tariqah when she was told that only 1 in a million Murids will ever achieve ma'arifah, and that the chances for her as a woman were even less. So when she found out that ma'arifah in the tariqah was accessible to women and young people, she eventually took bay'ah. She took permission to begin the tarbiyah and confirmed her ma'arifah all on the very same day when she was granted the wird of the tarbiyah. The international connections that South Africans have also further entrenched the tariqah here, including visits to Senegal for ziyarah and Maulud, and the historical 2007 conference in Morocco, to which South Africa sent 18 delegates. The intermarriage between the Tijani communities in South Africa and Senegal, and online connections such as through the South Africa-based Tijani Worldwide WhatsApp group run by Sheikh Fakhruddin Uwaisi, which connects Muqaddams and Murids from more than 40 countries, further contribute to the entrenchment. The next section of the paper speaks about the women of the FAYDAH in South Africa. Women, and particularly mothers in Cape Town, were among the first Murids of the tariqah, and from the beginning, women have opened their homes as the first zawiyas, as well as opening their kitchens and opening their wallets. There are a few known muqaddamas who, along with other female Murids, have been active in the teaching and in the Islamic development of new converts or reverts and Murids. Women have also been active on leadership structures, particularly in Gauteng. Some of the local women interviewees also expressed appreciation for the example of female luminaries in the tariqah, such as the daughters of Shaykh Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala anhu. There are a number of organizations and zawiyas around the country that service communities in various provinces which organize the hosting of the shuyukh and execute events. Leadership is decentralized on a national level. One of the challenges faced by the organizations and zawiyas is that the duties and responsibilities are often only shouldered by a few. Among the challenges most often cited during the interviews were the disunity and a lack of cooperation, both locally and nationally, too many scattered wazifa gatherings rather than meeting centrally, the need to cultivate more indigenous Black leadership within the tariqah, increasing Islamic education of local leadership of the tariqah, the steadfastness of the murids, the muqaddam seeking to set themselves up as shaykhs, the rise in Salafism and secularism in the country, and attrition rates of Tijanis who felt that they had outgrown the need for a sheikh or they just left Islam altogether. However, there are hopeful signs for the future of the FAYDAH in South Africa. Interviewees pointed out many positive developments, such as the number of young people entering the tariqah and the Islamic and secular educational strides made by those young people. I highlight one young murid who took the tariqah while in high school, who was inspired by the shaykhs of the tariqah to study Islam and Arabic, and now works as a translator in the Johannesburg Central Magistrate Court. He says his life has taken a completely different course due to the tariqah. Then there are 13 hufaz from the South African community that have so far been produced by Sheikh Bai's madrasa in Mauritania. Even older murids have been noted to be increasing in their knowledge of Islam and the tariqah. Though it was also noted that this still needs to increase, especially among the muqaddams. In conclusion, the FAYDAH of the Tariqah Tijaniya in South Africa, while still in some ways in its infancy, has come a long way in the past 30 years. In just 3 decades, the flood has become entrenched in the country. While there are many challenges that remain, those on the path see great potential ahead. The most powerful instrument for the future growth may be the Tijani Wird itself, seeking forgiveness through istighfar, sending salutations on the Prophet ﷺ, and remembering Allah through the kalima. These basic tenets, along with the ma'arifah, have the potential not only to continue to grow and elevate the tariqah in South Africa, but to transform the country as a whole. In the words of Muqaddam Ashraf Zansi, the freedom of our people in South Africa, think they have achieved is not the real freedom. Kalima is the real freedom. We can never be happy as Tijanis if our people don't have this freedom.
Pass, please.
Shukran, jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, and congratulations for this interesting communication. Thank you. So once again, I congratulate the different speakers for these interesting communications. This panel was of high value with 3 interesting and complementary points of view. So thank you all, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you very much all for excellent presentations.